The third and final topic for this particular coaching class is, I think, probably the most critical for project management. Now, of course, they're all related, that monitoring and evaluation are done in order to bring about control of the project. And so this is actually getting down to the most practical area. And I want you to answer this question honestly. Have you ever managed a project where the scope, the budget, or the calendar, the triple constraint, the project triangle, has changed mid-course? In other words, during implementation, has it changed? If you answered yes to that previous question, I want you to now tell me, was there a clear process for managing, or in other words, for manage is control, or for controlling these changes? Was there a clear process for managing and controlling these changes? And I want you to make a choice A, B, C, or D, one of these. Choose A if no, there was not a clear process for managing or controlling these changes. It was total chaos. All right. Secondly, I want you to answer B if somewhat there was a clear process, but we were barely coping. Or C, maybe there was a clear process for managing these changes. We did okay and survived to see another day. Or D, yes, there was a clear process for managing these changes. We were good and we were bordering on amazing. Read this. This is a sign that was discovered that I found very interesting. Is this the reality? And how would you choose which one of these? So just take a couple minutes and read through this and think about what would your response be. Often the job of the project manager is impossible. There are no good alternatives, or each alternative has its own set of problems. So I don't think there's any clear answer here, but it's something that's worth thinking about. All right, here's a question. Looking back at the PMD Pro1 course, what did we learn during the PMD Pro1 course about control? Do you remember anything? Here are some of the things that I thought of that came from the courses, from the guide. That first of all, control is the primary responsibility of every project manager. It's really job number one. The job is all about managing the time, the cost, and the scope, and realizing that change is the normal. Change will be necessary in every single project, and that care must be taken to seek the appropriate participation of people who were involved in the initial decision, and to get approvals when necessary relative to those changes that need to be made. So it all comes down to the reality that a project manager has to make difficult decisions about changes in time, in scope, in cost, in order to keep the quality at the level that it should be, in order to control the project. It's kind of like juggling, that a juggler is a person who throws several objects into the air at the same time and tries to keep them in balance and to keep any one of them from falling, because if any one of them falls, they're all going to fall and he or she will be a failure. So the elements of project management are being juggled by the project manager, and they're trying to control what's happening. Now, identifying changes is one key role, and managing the resolution of the issues that are surrounding those changes is extremely important. But often, and it's easy for a manager to make changes that are beyond his or her authority. So I want you to think about your own experience, and I want you to respond to this question: how do you make sure that only authorized changes are made? So take a few minutes, think about that question, and then answer it. Okay, here are some of the things that I wanted to mention about how what we should think about in terms of making changes. First of all, we need to determine or set what the tolerances are for project managers in advance. So in other words, a project manager needs to know how far can they go in making the decisions without escalating or sending a problem up to someone else. So it's very important that those are discussed probably during the detailed project planning processes, so that some of the easier and simpler changes can be made without bothering more senior people, but that then some changes won't be made without getting the proper authority. Secondly, discussing with a direct supervisor to identify the situations that will require escalations. In other words, those situations that are outside the tolerances. And then thirdly, using a governing structure, and sometimes this is called a board in project management literature, with appropriate voices represented so that the changes are made with the approval and with the buy-in and with the ownership of the important people in the project, and also that the changes will be within the scope of being funded by the donor. Fourthly, to make sure that participation of stakeholders continues and that their participation is honored through any of the changes are made. And then finally, carefully documenting the issues that arose that justified the changes and the management challenges that justify the changes, so that as those monitoring and evaluation processes are happening, that they can be factored into the recommendations and the decisions that are made. So I hope that gives you a good reminder, a refresher about evaluation, monitoring, control, and also helps you to reflect on your own experience and to connect to how you're using the knowledge and the project management tools, transferring those from the PMD Pro1 course into your real world work. So if there are any other questions, I'll pause here now to take those. Otherwise, the module is finished.